Hey everyone, and welcome back to Susanna's Pioneer Survival Skills. This is part 2 of Better in Leather. Today we're going to have a leatherworking demonstration by Dylan of Dillo Leatherworks in San Marcos, Texas.
A little piece of paper that's a pattern. Essentially, this is going to be for a sheath for a kitchen knife. So I basically I put the knife on the piece of paper, and then I marked the outline with a pencil, and then I took this wing divider that I mentioned earlier, and I basically spaced it all the way around in order to give myself some room to add the stitching.
The next step is to hold the pattern down firmly. Using a scratch awl, he traces a line all the way around the pattern. The line that's created should be a faint outline. This outline will indicate where to cut later on.
I will take this little outline, and then I will take a cut around. I will essentially give myself a little bit of extra space, so I'm not working with the whole piece of leather. It just makes doing the finer cuts a little bit easier if you're not having to work with a big old piece of leather.
The next step is to cut along the scored line. It's always better to leave a little extra, as you can't put the leather back together. You can always go back and clean up the edges with a bit of sandpaper. Another tip is that it's better to make multiple cuts to ensure precision. Adjusting and moving the leather while working will also ensure a more exact cut. In addition, the T-shape of the knife allows for a lot of added leverage while cutting.
I think cutting around corners or rounded corners is probably the trickiest part of the whole job, really. And that's why having a sharp knife is really invaluable. A dull knife is more dangerous than a sharp knife. So you can take your corners or your rounded edges, you can take them at multiple passes by essentially shaving off tiny bits at a time until you get what you want.
Using the wing divider once more, he moves along the edge of the leather to create a guide for the stitching line. This line will not show up in the final product, but it will ensure a more precise placement of the stitching line.
It's probably best to go ahead and sand down your edges to where and kind of fine tune it to get it as close to the end shape as you can. The next step would be to punch the holes in it. So as you can see why this would be pretty useful to have that line, is you would take this and then you would hammer it and you would work your way all the way down. And as soon as I started getting to a curve, I would switch over to this 2-prong. If I was going around this edge, you could see why having 2 at a time would be useful, because I can take this and then just kind of swerve it around. A gusset is essentially where the 2 pieces of leather meet. Lots of gussets, or 2 main gussets, which is that bottom panel there and this panel right here, are essentially just ways to add space and depth to the pockets. This is an example of a non-gusseted pocket. So this is just 2 pieces of leather stitched together, and so you just really don't have a lot of space in there. You know, could maybe keep an ID or a tiny card holder, but That's the kind of the whole purpose of a gusset on a bag, is to just add depth. There's a lot of stitches in this bag specifically. I would probably guess 300, 400 stitches, all done by hand. The edges are beveled with the edge beveler, taking just the smallest amount of leather off the sides, off both sides of the strap, and then slicked with. And so I was essentially using this piece almost all the way through this entire, at least front part of the bag. There's a backing panel where I was able to use the multi-pronged stitch across the top, but there's still some curves around here for the zipper.
Thank y'all so much for watching, and we'll catch you next time on Susanna's Pioneer Survival Skills.